Welcome to Module 15 of our MOOC on Economics of Gender and Development. Since the beginning of our MOOC, we are attempting at elaborately discussing three essential points. First, that there are visible and distinct differences in men's and women's economic outcomes, which are to a great extent results or products of various processes of gender socialization. Thus, addressing these differences in outcomes among men and women need deeper understanding of gender relations and processes of gender socialization. And thirdly, the neoclassical framework, which is commonly used in our economic analysis, does not recognize gender as an explicit analytical category and hence is greatly limited in its scope and effectiveness in addressing the issues of gender inequality that we see around us in our society. And then we have also seen what are the implications if we put in gender as an analytical category explicitly into our economic analysis. So these are the three essential points we are trying to discuss in the units and modules so far, and in this module we will try to carry forward our discussion a little further. Now, it is needless to mention that addressing the gender differentials or inequality begins with recognizing that those differentials or inequality, which we call ontological existence. At first, we need to understand there is an existence of the difference. In reality, the difference between men and women exists. This simply means that one has to make these differences visible, that we have to understand that how women outcomes are different than those of the men in diverse fields and diverse spaces. And this requires measuring the differences, the what to measure and how to measure. These are the two questions that we need to understand and discuss. And this relates to the conceptual and methodological considerations. And this particular module, we will try to address these issues. We will try to address what to measure and also how to measure. Essentially, therefore, we are looking at different conceptual and methodological considerations in making the differences between men and women visible. And this is the objective we will try to address in this module. And at the end of the day, we will see the various conceptual and theoretical understandings essential for measuring gender differences, and at the same time different ways of doing it. Now, we have two parts in our discussion. In the first part, we will try to devote ourselves to the discussion on conceptual and theoretical understanding relating to the differences or equality that we try to seek in the social justice framework. That equality of what? That what is that we should be addressing in terms of addressing the questions of gender inequality. In the second part of our discussion, we will try to focus on different ways of doing it once we decide what is the conceptual and theoretical framework with which we will try to demonstrate, we will try to make sense of these differences. So let me come to the first part, which relates to when we talk about gender inequality or gender equality, for instance, then what is that we talk about in terms of equality? And this reminds us to a classic piece by Amartya Sen. The title of this piece was Equality of What? And this was a lecture the Professor Sen delivered at Stanford University way back in 1979. So title itself is very provocative and illustrative. So he talks about equality of what? what is that we should be concerned about when we try to address the larger question of social justice and fairness in terms of providing equality or bringing in equality. So first point, we need to understand that difference or inequality is seen to be an aberration or deviation from the ideals of equality. So equality is a desirable normative goal of social justice, but the question is that what is that we seek to equalize? That is, equality of what? Now Sen begins in his lecture with a simple but very powerful proposition. Every theory of social justice endorses equality of something, but they differ on what that something means or implies. And precisely this is the point where we will try to see the various strands and various theories of social justice coming in. So instead of asking why equality is desirable or normatively at least required for theory of justice and fairness, and most of the theories accept it as something which is given, Sen reframes the debate to ask, that is, that what is that we need to address? Is it the equality of achievements or outcomes, which are often more visible and observable? Or it is the equality of resources? Is it the equality of well-being and welfare? Is it the equality of rights? Is it the equality of utility? Is it the equality of opportunity, and so on and so forth? And then if we look at the deep or at the core of these things, then we will always find that achievements or outcomes can differ greatly because we differ in opportunity, because we differ in rights, differ in well-being, differ in resources, access to resources, and so on and so forth. So therefore, whether we should actually concentrate only on achievements and outcomes, or should we also look at the other issues which relates and which determine or influence the achievements or outcome. Now Sen then goes on to explain that what are the different theories or what are the different strands and theoretical perspectives with which people who are looking at the question of social justice are trying to address this issue. The first is the case of utilitarianism, and which seeks to address the question from the perspective of equality of utility. The key idea in this perspective is that it aims at maximizing the total or average utility. And utility here means the satisfaction, pleasure, happiness derived or attained by the individuals. Then Sen tries to provide a critique that preferences or satisfaction can be very adaptive. It can be very normalized by different social norms. For instance, suppose oppressed and deprived people often adjust their desires and their preferences downward. And one quick example is about a chronically poor woman who tries to find satisfaction despite severe deprivation. So therefore, when we have discussed gender socialization processes, we have seen that how women are normalized or how women are socialized in a way to adjust their expectation, to adjust their behavior and action. And this leads to a sort of a moral blindness. Extreme inequality can appear as acceptable and something which is normal. And this is done through larger processes of gender socialization that we have already talked about. The core problem of utilitarianism reflects that it represents mental states, not necessarily real freedom or living conditions. So if we try to measure the difference or equality in terms of utility, this is not probably the best way that we should try to equalize between men and women. That we do not want to equalize the utility between men and women. So that's the core point of Sen's critique to whole argument of the utilitarian approach. The next approach, which Sen has talked about in greater detail, is about the Rawlsian theory of justice. And Rawls talks about it is the equality of primary goods. And the key idea in Rawls' theory relates to that we must seek to equalize or we must bring equality in terms of how people, irrespective of their gender, are entitled by different sets of primary goods. And by primary goods, it means that everything, income, rights, liberties, opportunities, everything that a rational person needs as a means to pursue their life with dignity and then with comfort. Now, Sen tries to critique this argument in terms of that, even if we provide the same set of primary goods to different persons, but they end up in having very different well-being. Their well-being attainments can be hugely different if we provide the same set of primary goods, no matter how do we define, to different individuals. The problem with Rawls is that the Rawls assumes normal individuals, where individuals are free, equal and rational, and then overlooks the different kinds of diversities that exist in our society, including the disability, the gender, age, illness, and other forms of social discriminations. So in the Rawlsian framework, we do not recognize these differences, and therefore we do not recognize the fact that even if we provide the same set of primary goods to different individuals, they can have the same set of, the attainment or same set of well-being and welfare. For instance, suppose if we take examples from our earlier cases, the two persons with equal income, one is suppose able-bodied and the other one is suppose differentially able. Even if we provide the same amount of income to two persons, based on their different forms of ability, physical ability, they can have or they can end up having different sets of well-being at the end. Similarly, if we provide the same amount of income to a man and women living in a very highly patriarchal household, their level of attainment in terms of well-being and welfare can be extremely different, because even if we have the same amount of income, the influences of patriarchy will tell us that the way men will be having rights over the use of the income may be completely different from that of the women who is subordinate in the household. So therefore, consequently, what we will have in the Rawlsian framework is that equal primary goods does not necessarily imply or mean the equal realization or achievements. Sen then comes to the third perspective in terms of libertarianism, where we talk about the rights and entitlements. The liberalism is about the rights and freedom. So this approach tries to see from this perspective. For instance, suppose Robert Nozick, for instance, tries to emphasize that how inviolable property rights and voluntary exchange can be important for study of social welfare and social justice. Sen tried to critique this argument, the libertarian argument, saying that formal equality of rights cannot coexist with extreme material inequality. For instance, suppose even if we have some piece of X guaranteeing the same set of rights, but different norms and different values and different socialization and different normalization will come still in the way of implementing those rights and those laws and regulations. So formal set of regulation can be hugely ineffective in providing the same kind of achievements under different settings. So core issue, therefore, that freedom does not come from a formal set of law or formal set of rights guaranteed to individual. And if we have the freedom, but people do not have the capability to convert the freedom, then it becomes hollow. So therefore, it is not the thing that we should be looking for, but rather we should be looking for something else. Another perspective which Sen tries to argue was the resource egalitarianism, that is equality of resources. This is a dominant argument still that we need to provide the equal distribution of resources, equal entitlements, equal access to resources to everyone. If we provide this equal access, then only we can expect that they will be having the same opportunity and resulting in same achievements. Sen, however, provided a critique. Resources are only means, they cannot be considered as ends, and he provides example of a car. Suppose even if we provide a car to different person who can drive and who cannot drive, your achievements or your success are going to be completely different. One who are able to drive the car will get the benefit of the car, but while giving a car to a person who does not know how to drive a car will be deprived of the benefits which he is supposed to be getting. So therefore, giving simply access may not be adequate in terms of getting the achievements realized. So therefore, the different person need different amounts of resources to do the different functioning. So there is a difference in the functioning also, and it leads to a problem that equal resources do not ensure the equal ability to live a dignified life. So given these four strengths, starting from utilitarianism, then coming to the resource egalitarianism, then libertarian idea, and further the other kinds of strengths that social justice tries to discuss, Sen provides his own kind of proposal, and he talks about very interesting idea called equality of capability. In the central argument, the Sen provides two ideas. One is called functioning and the other one is called capability. Now, functioning in Sen's approach is the different activities which a person manages or can do or manages to do. Like he can be well nourished, he can be educated, he can be mobile, he can be participating in society. So these different sets of activities which a person can do in society is known as the functioning. And capability in Sen's framework provides the freedom or set over which an individual can exercise their choices, and this set includes all the functionings possible. So therefore, what he talks about, that it is the expanding the people capability that matters. If we have a larger capability, which means that you have a larger set of functioning, and accordingly you will be ending up with different set of the achievements. In essence, what he argues is that the capability set of functionings of men are quite large compared to the set of functioning of that of women, which is resulting in the differences that we observe in the society. Why capability matters? The Sen says that it takes the human diversity very seriously, and people differ in their different sets of capabilities. It recognizes the social, cultural, and biological constraints. It focuses on the freedom, because if you have a set of different functionings, that it represents, the set itself represents the the actual freedom and choice over those functionings. And then it means that you are shifting from the means to the real opportunities. All right. So therefore, the capability in Sen's framework is one of the most radical and then most important contribution. So the next part we need to understand that how to measure. How to measure depends on what to measure, and what to measure relates to the conceptual and theoretical discussion that we have just now. That in terms of understanding that what equality of what, we have to understand what we actually seek to equalize, and that is coming from different perspectives, different theories, and we have discussed and finally ending with Sen's idea of capability. In whatever way we define, the next is the how to do it. There are two approaches in doing this gender differences. The one is called unidimensional and other one is called multidimensional. And then when we talk about the dimension, just simply remember that it is the number line, that how many number lines will require to measure. If you have only one number line, then it is unidimensional, and if we have more than one line, then it is multidimensional. We can think about different theoretical perspectives that we have just discussed in terms of dimensions. For instance, suppose if we see that utility, so utility can be unidimensional. One line will be fine to measure different persons' utility. So therefore it is unidimensional. We can also have primary goods unidimensional as well as, of course, the multidimensional. Suppose if we consider only one primary good like income, and then we'll need only one line to measure different persons' income, so that is unidimensional. However, if we go beyond income and we allow another primary good to be accommodated, then of course we will go multidimensional. Similarly, the rights can be unidimensional as well as multidimensional, considering the different kinds of rights that we have. Suppose if we have political right and then we measure along that, only one line will be required. But if we allow along with the political right, the right to education or right to employment, it essentially becomes multidimensional. But capability approach in nature is multidimensional, because capability set accommodates a set of functioning, set of activities over which an individual has their choices and then freedom. So therefore it is essentially a multidimensional concept. The how to measure depends on the what to measure. So therefore conceptual and theoretical understanding will lead you to the different kinds of measurements that we'll try to achieve. So it can be unidimensional or it can be multidimensional. If we try to capture the gender differences, there are different ways of doing it. The most simplest way of doing it includes the sex disaggregated data and indicators. A lot of indicators are provided for men and also for women. Suppose education level of women vis-a-vis education level of men, and that difference you can be seen, it becomes visible what is the achievement of the men and vis-a-vis that of women. We can also see, suppose labor force participation rate of men versus that of labor force participation rate of women. So that's a sex disaggregated data. Census provides sex disaggregated data. NFHS, National Family Health Survey, provides sex disaggregated data. NSSO different rounds provide sex disaggregated data. And most importantly, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, MOSPI, provides a publication called Men and Women Report in India, where we get these different sex disaggregated data. And then if we are given with a set of sex disaggregated data, and then we take the simple difference between the achievement of men and women, and we call this as a gender differential or gender gap. So this is the simplest way to measure the differences between the gender, right? So, but however, we need to understand and we have to emphasize the point that the measurement is actually dependent on the theory or concept that we are trying to adopt. Theoretical perspective, unidimensionality or multidimensionality, as we have talked about. The second approach of measuring gender difference relates to different kind of index or composite indices. A number of indicators are combined to form an index. Index is a summary measure which tries to provide some normative idea regarding the achievements of a large number of indicators. We have index value can range from 0 to 1, and then that is to be seen that more is the value of the indicators. Combining different indices we can obtain the composite index. Many of the indicators are combined, many of the indices are formed, and then all over the indicators and indices we again combine to get the composite index. It is a summary measure. It relates to the issues of normalization and aggregation. For instance, suppose if we are having set of indicators, different indicators can be obtained both for success and failure, but it has to be normalized. These are to be normalized to add them together so that they are on the same scale, they are on the same direction, and then we need to have a proper method of aggregation. And there are two ways of aggregating it, normalizing it. One, it can be your own kind of method, or you can adopt some standard indices and composite indexes. For instance, suppose GII, Gender Inequality Index, GDI, Gender Development Index, GPI, Gender Poverty Index, or GGI, All right. So these are the different indicators and different indices that we have. For instance, suppose gender inequality index reflects the gender-based disadvantages in 3 dimensions: that reproductive health, empowerment, and labor market. It shows the loss of potential human development due to inequality between female and male achievements in these dimensions. Value ranges from 0 to 1. 0 means that they are, since it is an inequality measure, so 0 means absence of inequality, that is equal, there is no difference. And more to the 1, it means that more unequal they are. All right. And then this is the methodology of adopting the GII, and this is included in the Human Development Report developed by UNDP. You have the dimensions: health, empowerment, and labor market. You have the indicators, and each of the dimensions we are having dimensional index, and then gender inequality index is a composite index which combines the 3 indices coming from 3 different dimensions. All right. So this is what is GII. Similarly, GDI, GPI, and triple GI means that gender development index measures the ratio of female to male human development index. So gender parity index, that is the direct ratio between the female value and the male value, and then we can compare whether it is less than 1 or more than 1. If it is less than 1, then value of male is greater. If it is greater than 1, value of female is greater. And if it is absolutely equal, then they are equal. Then also Global Gender Gap Index, which is developed by Economic Forum, World Economic Forum. It takes the dimensions like economic participation, education, health, political empowerment. And besides these sex disaggregated data, the composite and normal indices, we can also use the other inequality measures to measure the gender differences or gender inequality. For instance, suppose we can use Lorenz curve, we can use Gini coefficient, or you can use Atkinson's or tail index as the case may be. So therefore, all the inequality measures can be applied to measure the gender inequality in different values and different indicators. All right. But at the same time, we need to understand that whatever we do, whether it is a simple difference, sex disaggregated data, whether it is an index or composite index, or whether it is an own self-development index, or at guaranteed or the given index, or whether it is inequality measure, we need to fulfill certain desirable properties of these measures. Some of the important properties are like anonymity or symmetry measure, the property of symmetry. It means that the measure should be independent of who earns the income or who has the achievement. If we suppose change or swap the value, income between individuals, that should not be a matter of concern. There is a property called scale invariance or mean independence. Suppose if everyone increases or everyone decreases by same proportion, and the value should not change, so that is called scale invariance. Suppose suppose there is a gap, and then male value increases by 10%, female value is also increasing by 10%, then there should not be any change in the value that we have originally obtained. Then we have a Pigot-Dalton transfer principle. Suppose if we allow a progressive transfer from a greater value to a lower value, or a richer to a poor person, without reversing their rank, and that should reduce the measure of inequality. Then there is a monotonicity. What is mean that if there is a worsening or improvement in the indicators, that should also be reflected in the overall measure that we have adopted. And then a very important measure of decomposability, that whatever measure we have, that should be able to be decomposed into subpopulations between or within the group, and that's a very important property. Some of the indicators fulfill those properties. For instance, suppose tail index fulfills the property of decomposability. And then of course the sensitivity, which means that the measures should respond to appropriately to the changes in different parts of the distribution of the value, top, middle, or bottom. So therefore there are a set of desirable properties. Any measure of gender difference should be tested for fulfillment of these properties. So we come to the end of this module. we have, let me summarize and conclude in 4 broad points. The one is the addressing gender gap or gender inequality requires measuring the gap or inequality, that you have to show that inequality exists. You have to show that difference is visible. In order to do that, this measurement are predicated on conceptual and theoretical premises and framework. So you need to have a very clear conceptual and theoretical framework that what you are actually trying to measure and why. And once that is decided, then we need to design the method of measuring it, whether it is unidimensional or multidimensional, whether it is simple difference of sex disaggregated data or index or composite index or inequality measure, whether it is self-designed or available measures to be adopted. And all such measures has to fulfill a set of desirable properties. Alright, a set of desirable properties are to be tested if we want to apply different measures capturing the gender differences. So this concludes the module 15, that is the gender differences, that what matters and how to measure it. And as we proceed from here on, we will try to take up some of the things that we have discussed in this module in some greater detail. Thank you very much.